When my wife Margaret passed away, I thought grief would be the hardest part. I was wrong. The lawyer handed me an old envelope, its edges yellowed and brittle. Inside was a single piece of paper, a property deed, a shack in the Montana woods, signed in her name. No explanation, no note, just coordinates scribbled at the bottom like a secret she never meant for me to see. I hadn't heard her mention that place in decades. Back in our early years, before the kids, before the house in Portland, she used to disappear for weekends away. I thought it was her quiet time, maybe a retreat. I never asked. The more I stared at that deed, the more wrong it felt. The lawyer's words echoed in my head. She insisted you get this immediately after her passing. Why? Why a place so remote? 2 weeks later, I packed my truck and drove north. I couldn't explain it. It wasn't curiosity, it was compulsion. Like she was still pulling me towards something unfinished. By the time I reached the forest, the sky had bruised into purple twilight. The GPS cut out miles before I found the old trailhead. Every turn of the dirt road seemed to whisper her name. Then I saw it, the shack. Weathered wood, one window boarded shut, another cracked open like an old wound. And on the front door, faint but clear, were her words carved into the grain. "Forgive me, Tom." That's when I knew. Whatever she'd hidden here, it wasn't meant to die with her. The next morning, I stood before that shack, coffee thermos in one hand, the keys from the lawyer in the other. The forest was unnervingly still, no birds, no wind, just the slow creak of the trees as if they were watching. The smell of rain clung to the air, mixing with something else, old smoke. Someone had been here not long ago. The lock was rusted, but it turned too easily, like it had been oiled recently. I pushed the door open, and the hinges groaned a sound that didn't feel like metal, it felt human. Inside, the darkness wasn't empty, it was dense. Dust floated in thin rays of light, settling over a small table, a broken chair, and a few framed photos on the wall. One of them stopped my breath. Margaret. Not young, maybe mid-30s, but her hair was longer, her smile softer. Beside her stood a boy, maybe 10 years old, dark-haired, holding her hand like it was the only thing keeping him safe. My stomach turned. I whispered into the silence, "Who are you, kid?" A drawer near the bed was jammed shut, so I yanked it open with both hands. Inside were notebooks, small, bound in leather, her handwriting covering every page. The first one began, "He found me again. I don't know how long I can keep Daniel safe." Daniel. The same name I'd seen in the corner of the photo. I sat down hard on the floor. 40 years of marriage, and I'd never once heard her mention a boy named Daniel. The date on that first page was 1983, the year we met. That's when I realized the truth wasn't buried with my wife. It was waiting for me here, alive and breathing in the scent of her fear. As I closed the notebook, something outside cracked. A branch? A footstep? The forest was watching again. That I killed the light on my phone and listened. The trees speak in small sounds, twig snap, leaf breath, the hush of sap moving. This wasn't that. This was wait. A careful step, then another, not far from the porch. I slid the notebook back into the drawer, eased the door until it was barely ajar, and let the forest pour into the crack like cold water. "Hello?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. Nothing answered, and the silence stretched, tight as wire. Then, under the sill, a shadow peeled away from a cedar trunk and disappeared. Not an animal. Too deliberate. Too patient. I stepped onto the porch. Mud clung to the boards in fresh ovals, tread marks chewed like shark teeth. Someone with heavy boots had stood exactly where I was standing, recently. A cigarette butt lay in the corner, lipstick red ember long gone, filter pinched flat by nervous fingers. I don't smoke. Margaret never did. My name, however, had been carved into the rail, Sam, but not by my hand. The grooves were shallow, rushed, as if the person carving had one eye on the trees. The wind shifted, and the shack exhaled a smell I hadn't noticed inside, motor oil, paper, and the faint, acidic bite of fear. I followed the boot prints around the side. They stopped at the window, where the grime had been wiped in a half-moon to make a peephole. Whoever was out here had been watching me read. I snapped a photo of the prints, then checked my phone. No bars, just a mocking SOS icon. A second set of marks, smaller, lighter, cut across the path and vanished into pine needles. 2 people, or 1 person twice. I crouched, touched the soil. Still cool, but not cold. 10, 15 minutes old. Back inside, I opened a different notebook. The same looping hand. He doesn't knock anymore. He waits until dark and taps the window with his ring. A damp oval stained the page beneath the word ring. I could almost hear it, metal on glass, a metronome for dread. Something clinked in the brush. Reflex took over. I grabbed the iron fireplace poker and returned to the doorway, heart sprinting. If you're there, I said, say it. Or I start calling out names. I didn't know whose. But the woods did. A bird exploded from a low branch, and my nerves misfired. Then I saw it, not a person, but a scrap of denim snagged on barbed wire along the property line, fresh tear, thread still curled. Beyond the fence, tire tracks ribbed the mud in parallel grooves, turning toward an old logging road. Whoever had come had left, but not far. It felt less like retreat and more like orbit. On the table, under the notebooks, I found a folded map. Margaret had circled the shack in red and drawn 3 arrows into the trees, each labeled with a single initial, D, R, H, on the back. She'd written, if you're reading this, bring the ring. He always follows the ring. I checked my hands, my pockets, my memory. No ring. Only my wedding band, and that one had a lifetime of ghosts attached. Outside, an engine coughed to life, then died, like a beast waking and deciding against it. When it caught on the second try, the sound rolled low and mean through the trunks. I stepped into the yard, poker by my leg, and watched twin headlights smear pale light between the pines. They paused, looked at me, blinked twice, and vanished toward the road. The forest closed again. I wasn't alone out here. I never had been. The past had neighbors, and at least one of them knew my name. The morning came heavy, gray, and wet. Mist hung low between the trees like smoke refusing to rise. I hadn't slept. I kept hearing that phantom engine cough and the faint, impossible tapping on glass that came from nowhere near a window. I made coffee on the old propane stove and spread Margaret's map out on the table. The initials, D, R, H, looked like coordinates of memory. My finger traced them again and again until I realized, they weren't random. They formed a triangle around the shack, and I was sitting dead in its center. The first mark, D, couldn't mean anyone but Daniel. The boy from the photo, the name from the journal. My chest ached at the thought that my wife had once hidden a child, maybe even her own. But who were R and H? The others in this story she never told me. I stepped outside. The air felt colder than the day before, almost metallic. A faint trail led north, deeper into the woods, where the fog thickened until the trees looked like ghosts leaning on each other. After 20 minutes, I saw it, an old mailbox half swallowed by ivy. No path, no house, just the mailbox with a single rusted word carved into the side, Hail. Inside was a key wrapped in cloth. The cloth smelled like lavender, Margaret's perfume. The tag on the key read simply, basement. When I returned to the shack, the floorboards under the bed caught my eye. One plank didn't fit right. I pried it loose with a screwdriver, and the wood lifted easily, too easily. Beneath was a trapdoor, iron latch cold and slick with condensation. I lifted it, half expecting rats. Instead, a breath of cool, dry air rushed up, like the shack itself exhaled. Stairs led down into blackness. My flashlight beam quivered against concrete walls. It wasn't a root cellar. It was built from stone and steel, deliberate, hidden. On a table at the bottom sat an old metal box. The lid was carved with the same initials from the map, D, R, H. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside lay a small silver ring with an engraving I knew too well, Forever yours, M. Margaret's handwriting. But it wasn't my ring. I turned it in the light and froze. The inside of the band was engraved again, this time with something newer, harsher, deep cuts that spelled a single word. Run. That's when I heard it. Upstairs. The front door. Hinges groaning, floorboards creaking. Slow, deliberate steps. Someone had come back for the ring. The footsteps above me moved with the certainty of someone who belonged here. Slow, heavy, and familiar. Dust fell from the ceiling in thin gray ribbons. I turned off my flashlight, my breath catching in my throat. Whoever it was knew exactly where the trapdoor was, because the creak of wood came to rest right above it. A pause. Then 3 slow knocks. I froze. The sound didn't come from the door to the shack, it came from directly over my head, the floor. Knock. 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 My pulse hammered in my ears. I pressed my hand against the concrete wall, trying to steady myself. The ring in my pocket felt like it was burning through the fabric. The air smelled like iron and damp stone, and something else, motor oil. The same scent I'd caught yesterday, now strong enough to sting. The voice came next. Low. Rough. Male. Sam. My name, drawn out like an echo of a nightmare. I backed away toward the far wall, scanning for another exit, nothing but shelves of tools, cans, old jars. My hand closed around a rusted crowbar. The latch above me rattled. I held my breath. Then the footsteps retreated. 1, 2, 3 paces back. Silence. A door slammed. The shack groaned. I climbed the stairs, one at a time, the crowbar shaking in my grip. When I pushed open the trapdoor, the cabin was empty, but the front door stood wide open. Cold wind rushed in, carrying rain and the scent of pine. On the table lay one of Margaret's journals, open to a new page I hadn't seen before. Fresh ink, still wet. If he comes, don't let him have the ring. He thinks it's his, but it's not. It was never his. Outside, in the mud, boot prints led away from the door, but halfway to the tree lean, they vanished, like the earth itself had swallowed him. I looked around for movement. Nothing. Only the whisper of branches and the distant drip of water from the roof. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text, you shouldn't have opened the box. My blood ran cold. Before I could reply, another message came through. I told her to bury it, not you. The phone slipped from my hand, the screen shattering on the floorboards. Margaret hadn't been hiding from some stranger. She'd been hiding him. And now he knew exactly where I was. Rain was falling harder now, a constant whisper against the tin roof that made the cabin feel smaller, trapped between the sound and the dark. I sat on the floor with Margaret's journal in my lap, my reflection flickering in the cracked phone screen beside me. Her handwriting filled the pages in frantic waves, half letters, half confessions. He found me again. He always does. I thought the woods would bury him, but you can't bury what you owe. My pulse thudded. Who was he? And what debt could she have possibly owed? I turned the page. The ink had run in spots, smeared by tears or rain, I couldn't tell. If Sam ever finds this place, he'll know the truth about Daniel. About what I did to keep us safe. Daniel. That name again. The boy from the photo, the one standing beside her, smiling as if nothing bad had ever existed. But now, reading these words, I knew the smile had been built on lies. I flipped another page, and an envelope slipped free, yellowed and brittle. Inside was a faded birth certificate. My eyes scanned the words until one line stopped me cold. Father, Samuel R. Hale. Mother, Margaret Hale. I felt the room tilt. My hands trembled. I read it again, slower this time. Daniel wasn't her secret child. He was ours. A metallic taste filled my mouth. All those years she said she couldn't have children, the endless nights of quiet disappointment, she had lied. Lied to protect him, from whom? From me? No. Not me. I stared at the ring still lying on the table. The engraving, "Forever yours, M. Caught the light. Beneath it, the second word burned into my brain, run. My head spun. I needed air. I shoved the door open, stepping out into the downpour. Lightning cut across the tree line, and for a split second, I saw a silhouette between the pines. Tall. Still. Watching. I called out, "Daniel?" No answer. The figure moved, fast and silent, vanishing into the mist. I ran after it, slipping on mud, heart pounding with something between terror and guilt. Branches tore at my jacket, rain blinding me, until I stumbled into a small clearing. There, half buried under the roots of an oak, was a wooden cross. No name. Just the initials carved into the bark, DRH. Daniel R. Hale. I fell to my knees. The earth was freshly disturbed. And there, pressed into the mud beside the grave, was a single boot print. Not mine. Whoever had been watching me, had already been here. And maybe, he wasn't done digging. Lightning split the sky open again, long enough for me to see the mud-streaked cross clearly. The initials DRH glistened under the rain, and for a heartbeat, I swore the letters pulsed, like the earth itself was breathing. The storm had turned the clearing into a pit of shadows and noise, every sound amplified, every movement suspect. I crouched near the grave, rain running down my face, tracing the wooden cross with trembling fingers. "Daniel," I whispered. Saying his name out loud felt like invoking something ancient, something that didn't belong to the living anymore. The ground under the oak tree was soft, too soft. Someone had been here recently. The dirt was loose, dark, almost black. My fingers brushed against something cold. Metal. I dug it out and found a small locket, caked in mud. It clicked open with a wet snap. Inside, 2 photos stared back at me, Margaret, and me. Younger. Smiling. And behind our pictures, carved into the metal, were 3 words I didn't expect to see. "You were warned." A chill climbed my spine. I turned toward the woods. "Who's there?" I shouted. No response. Just the howl of wind and a faint mechanical hum, somewhere distant, like an old generator starting up. But the cabin didn't have power. The hum grew louder. Then a beam of light cut through the trees, a flashlight, jerking side to side. Someone was coming fast, crashing through the branches. I ducked behind the tree, mud seeping into my clothes. A figure emerged, broad-shouldered, wearing a long coat, the same oil-stained boots I'd seen prints of earlier. The man stopped at the grave, breathing hard. He knelt, brushing the mud aside with bare hands. "Damn you, Margaret," he muttered. His voice cracked under the rain. "You couldn't just let it die, could you?" He lifted something from the earth, a small metal box, like the one I'd found in the cellar. Then he turned his face toward me, and the beam from his flashlight caught his eyes, pale, cold, familiar. My stomach dropped. It was me. Older. Weathered. Scarred. I stumbled backward, slipping in the mud. The man, my reflection, my ghost, whatever he was, tilted his head, expression unreadable. "You finally caught up," he said softly. "Took you long enough." My mind screamed impossible, but before I could move, thunder swallowed his words. When I looked again, the grave was empty. No man. No box. Just the storm raging on, and the faint outline of boot prints leading back toward the cabin. The same prints that had vanished before. Except this time, they were mine. When I stumbled back into the cabin, soaked and shivering, it felt smaller, like the walls had inched closer, swallowing the air. The fire had gone out, yet the room still smelled of smoke. My footprints, wet and dark, trailed across the wooden floor, but so did another set, leading toward the basement door. My breath caught. I hadn't left that door open. The hinges creaked as it swayed slightly in the draft, revealing nothing but darkness below. My reflection in the window flickered as lightning flashed again, except this time, the reflection didn't move with me. I took a step forward. The floor groaned beneath my weight, echoing like a pulse. "Who are you?" I whispered. The reflection smiled. My smile. A sound came from the basement, 3 dull knocks. Slow. Rhythmic. Like the ones from before. I gripped the crowbar and descended, 1 step at a time. Each creak was a heartbeat. When I reached the bottom, the faint hum I'd heard outside returned, filling the air with a low vibration that made the walls tremble. The generator in the corner sputtered to life. Its light flickered, casting uneven shadows over the concrete. On the far wall, words had been scratched into the surface, letters gouged deep into the stone. "Remember the promise." I ran my hand over the grooves. The edges were old, years old, but the message looked freshly carved. Beneath it, a date, 1998. The year Daniel would have turned 8. The hum grew louder. I turned, and froze. A man stood at the far end of the basement. His back was to me. Broad shoulders. Long coat. The same boots caked with mud. "Who are you?" I demanded, voice cracking. He turned. My stomach flipped. His face was mine. Older. Hardened. Eyes hollow, yet knowing. "You buried me," he said calmly. "But she brought me back." My throat tightened. "That's impossible." He stepped closer. The hum deepened, rattling the shelves. "You think death buries guilt, Sam? It just buries the truth. Margaret didn't die to save you. She died to contain you." The light flickered again, and for a moment, there were 2 shadows on the wall, then 1, then 2 again. My heart thundered in my ears. "What do you want from me?" He smiled faintly. "You already gave it. You just don't remember." The generator sputtered and died, plunging the basement into blackness. But before it did, I saw his hand reach toward mine, cold, shaking, identical, and slip something into my palm. When the light vanished completely, I was alone again. The only sound was the storm above. I opened my hand. The object gleamed faintly in the dark. It was the same ring from before. But this time, it bore a new engraving. "To Daniel, from Father." The storm had passed by morning, but the forest didn't feel any lighter. Mist hung low over the trees, and every sound seemed swallowed by it, like the world was holding its breath. I sat by the window, the ring still in my hand, turning it over and over until my reflection warped in its surface. "To Daniel, from Father." The engraving burned into my thoughts like a confession I hadn't yet made. Margaret had written that Daniel was ours, but this ring, proved something else. It wasn't just a secret she'd kept from me. It was a secret she'd kept for me. I remembered her words now, the ones she'd said the night before she died. "Promise me you won't go back there, Sam. Promise me you'll let the past stay buried." But I had gone back. And the past wasn't buried at all. I needed answers, real ones. So I went to the drawer by her old writing desk, the one she'd always kept locked. It opened easily this time. Inside, under stacks of yellowed letters, was a sealed envelope with my name scrawled in her trembling handwriting. I tore it open. "If you're reading this, Sam, then I failed. Daniel found you. Or you found him. It doesn't matter which. You always end up finding each other." My eyes skimmed the words, my chest tightening with every line. You don't remember what happened because I made sure you wouldn't. Daniel wasn't your son. He was you, the part of you that couldn't stop. The one I tried to save, even if it meant losing you twice. I froze. The basement. The grave. The reflection. It all slammed together in my head like shards of glass. You buried him years ago, Sam. After that night. But pieces of him stayed. In the cabin. In the woods. In you. The letter ended abruptly, as if she'd stopped mid-sentence. But there was one last thing taped to the back, a small Polaroid. Margaret, standing in front of the cabin, her arms around two men. Both of them me. The world tilted. My pulse roared in my ears. From outside, the crunch of footsteps on wet leaves broke the silence. Slow. Deliberate. I turned toward the window. Through the fog, a figure stood at the tree line, tall, familiar, motionless. He raised his hand. And in it, he held another ring. Identical to mine that I stepped outside, the fog wrapping around me like a living thing. The air was thick and heavy with the smell of pine and damp earth, the scent of everything Margaret had once loved, and everything she'd tried to protect me from. The figure stood just beyond the oak trees, waiting. He didn't move. Neither did I. We were mirrors now, two lives folded into one, two pasts bleeding into a single, unbearable truth. The man in the mist, the one with the same tired eyes, the same crooked stance, wasn't a ghost or a reflection. He was what I'd buried. What she'd hidden. Daniel, I said softly. The name tasted foreign on my tongue, but he smiled, my smile, as if it still belonged to him. You finally remember, he said. His voice was mine, only deeper, colder. You thought she could erase me. That she could cut out the part of you that didn't deserve peace. I clenched my fists. You're not real. He took a step closer. The fog thinned just enough for me to see the second ring glinting in his hand. Then why do you still wear mine? The ground beneath us trembled. A distant rumble, not thunder this time, rolled through the earth. The gravesite. The oak tree. The cabin. Everything around us began to blur, as if the world itself couldn't tell which of us it was supposed to keep. She did this to protect you, Daniel said. But she forgot something. He extended his hand, the ring resting in his open palm. You can't bury what you never forgave. For a moment, I saw her, Margaret, standing between us. Her hair wet with rain, her eyes full of the same quiet sorrow I'd seen the day she left. She reached for me, whispering the same words I'd read in her letter. Promise me you'll let him go. But how do you let go of yourself? I looked down at the ring in my hand, to Daniel, from Father. And then back at him. Maybe we both deserve to rest. He nodded. Then end it. I pressed the ring into the mud, feeling the cold metal sink into the earth. The moment it disappeared, the fog began to lift. The forest brightened, not sunlight, but something softer, older, like the memory of light. When I looked up again, Daniel was gone. So was the cabin. All that remained was the oak tree. And beneath it, two markers. One with his name. One with mine. I stood there until the mist cleared completely, the morning quiet and still. For the first time in years, there were no echoes. No whispers. No ghosts. Just peace. And maybe, just maybe, that was Margaret's final gift.